Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Before I Go podcast. I wanted to take a few moments today to talk about forgiveness. According to Psychology Today, forgiveness is the release of resentment or anger. Forgiveness doesn't necessarily mean reconciliation. One doesn't have to return to the same relationship or accept the same harmful behaviors from an offender. Forgiveness is important for the mental health of those who have been victimized. So let me ask you, who do you need to forgive today? Forgiveness can be tricky. We believe that if we have been wronged by someone, then they do not deserve our forgiveness, that somehow we're punishing them by withholding it. Here's the problem with that way of thinking. Withholding forgiveness does more damage to you than it does to them. And chances are the person who wronged you, honey, ain't even thinking about you. After the incident, they went on about their business. And sometimes they may not even realize that they did something wrong and should be asking for forgiveness. Forgiveness is never for the other person. Forgiving is an action that only you can perform for you. Holding on to resentment or anger hurts your mental health more than anything anyone else can ever do to you. It's important to remember that just because you forgive someone, that does not mean that you have to be reconciled to them and the relationship just goes on like nothing ever happened. Forgiveness means that you will not allow anger to control your life. Forgiveness is accepting the situation, allowing yourself to feel what you feel, and then releasing it and moving on. I'm not trying to minimize it because I know it is not easy. There was a time in my life when I believed my superpower was holding grudges. And I know, and this is hard to say, that I have allowed people to die without ever forgiving them. It took me more than a decade to forgive my first husband. And I knew that I had truly forgiven him when I was able to be in his presence without feeling the rage that I had carried around for 25 years. It's a process, but it is vitally important to forgive. I read an article on the Johns Hopkins website about the topic, and it listed 5 steps to forgiveness. The first step is to reflect and remember. Reflect and remember the events that hurt you and how those events have affected you. Number 2, empathize with the other person. And I know this is a tough one, but we have to realize that everyone is going through something. Everyone is carrying around something, and it may not have anything to do with you at all. The third step is to forgive deeply, which simply means go deeper than the superficial. It can't just be saying the words, "I forgive you," but still holding on to the pain. It's a process that goes beyond just saying the words. Number 4, let go of any expectations. You may never receive an apology, so don't expect one, and you will not be disappointed. Then you have to take action and decide to forgive. Now, if you're unable to go to the person and offer forgiveness for whatever reason, then write it down in a journal or share it with someone else that you trust. You can forgive someone in your heart by letting go of the anger, letting go of the resentment without actually saying it to them. Again, they might not even know that they've done you wrong, so you can go to someone and say, "I forgive you," and they can look at you like, "For what?" So forgive them in your heart. Again, forgiveness is for you, not necessarily for the other person. Now, not only is it important to forgive others, but it is also important to learn how to forgive ourselves. It is no secret that we are our own worst enemies. How often do you beat yourself up when something goes wrong in your life? We need to learn to forgive ourselves in the same way that we forgive others, and for the same reasons. Now, I recognize that sometimes forgiving ourselves may be tied to the fact that we don't feel we are worthy of forgiveness if someone else doesn't forgive us first, if that makes sense. I have two things to say about that. Number one, even if someone cannot or will not forgive us, we still have to be willing to forgive ourselves. And number two, you better go to the Lord for that forgiveness. My Bible says in 1 John 1:9 that if we confess our sins, he is faithful to forgive our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. And that is good enough for me, and it should be good enough for you. Again, forgiveness is not always easy, but I challenge you today to forgive, not for them, but for you. Forgive them, forgive yourself. And that's all I have for today. Thank you so much for listening. But before I go, let me share with you this quote from Marianne Williamson that says, "The practice of forgiveness is our most important contribution to the healing of the world." I'll see you next time.